In this video, we're going to learn how to factor non-monic trinomials by grouping. So let's first understand what the word non-monic means. What non-monic means is that the lead coefficient, in this case the coefficient of x squared, is not 1. So it is not equal to 1. And in this case, 6 is not equal to 1. So this is a non-monic trinomial. Now they're a little more tricky than the regular monomials, but not too much. In many textbooks they teach you how to factor these using trial and error. I'm going to do something that will build on some skills that you already have and minimize some of the trial and error. Now, the summary of the steps is as follows. The first thing is that we're going to find two numbers whose product is 6 times 12. So the product of the two numbers is going to be the product of 6 and 12. That's 72. And the sum of the numbers is going to be 17. So I have to find two numbers that multiply to 72 and add to 17. That's similar to what we used to do, but this time we have to include the lead coefficient. The next thing is to split the coefficient of x, 17x, into two parts, then rewrite and group, find common factors, and then finally factor. So let's take those steps one at a time. Now I've done a little work ahead of time in this video, and I have found that the two numbers that we need to choose are 8 and 9 to multiply to 72 and add to 17. And we can see that that's correct. So now the next step is going to be to split the coefficient of x. And here's what I mean. I mean, take this coefficient 17x and write it as 8x plus 9x. That's the same thing as 17x, but we're just going to split it. And then the next thing we do is we group. So let's see how that works. We take this polynomial and we write it as 6x squared plus 8x plus 9x plus 12. And the grouping part is to consider the first two terms together and the second two terms together. All right, so that part is the rewrite and grouping. So we rewrote it and we grouped in twos. Next, we find the common factors in the first group and we factor those out. So the common factors in the first group are going to be, let's see, 2 and x. So we'll factor out a 2x from the first two terms. That's going to leave 3x plus 4. And you can see that 2x times 3x is 6x squared. 2x times 4 is 8x, so we did that right. Now we look at the next two terms. We take 9x plus 12, and the common factor there is 3. So we'll factor out a 3. 3 times 3x equals 9x, and 3 times 4 equals 12. Notice that when you do this correctly, these two terms will be the same. Now what we do is we apply the distributive property kind of in reverse, and we're going to factor out 3x plus 4 from this expression. So we're going to take out 3x plus 4, and then 3x plus 4 was multiplied by 2x, and then 3. And this is the factored form of 6x squared plus 17x plus 12. Okay, let's take a look at another one. So here's a second problem. We're going to factor 2x squared plus x minus 3. And remember that our first step is to find two numbers whose product is 2 times negative 3, that's negative 6, and whose sum is 1. And we can see here that I've done my trial and error, and I've chosen negative 2 and 3. Negative 2 and 3 sum to 1 and multiply to negative 6. The next step is to split the coefficient of x, which in this case is 1, to 2x squared minus 2x plus 3x minus 3. Okay, so we split that coefficient x, 1x, into negative 2x plus 3x. We then rewrite and group. So we're going to really group those, 2x squared minus 2x plus 3x minus 3. So there's the grouping. Now we're going to find the common factors in each group. In the first group, the common factor is 2x. And in the second group, the common factor is 3. And then we can factor out the x minus 1 and get our result of x minus 1 times 2x plus 3, which equals 2x squared plus x minus 3. Now here's another example. In this example, we're going to factor 10x squared minus 11x minus 6. Now, we need to find two numbers whose product is 10 times negative 6, that's negative 60, and whose sum is negative 11. And we're going to choose negative 15 and 4. Now you need to watch this carefully because there's something that we haven't seen yet that I'd like you to be aware of. So we'll start with 10x squared, and we're going to split the coefficient plus 4x minus 15x minus 6. Next, we're going to rewrite and group. So this is going to take 10x squared plus 4x minus 15x minus 6, and we're going to group these two things together and these two things together. Now, in the first two, the common factor is going to be 2x. All right, so this is going to be 2x times 5x plus 2. And now in this next one, the common factor is 3. But notice here that we're factoring out, because of the minus sign, a negative 3. Now what that means is that we have to watch our signs. Negative 3 times 5x is negative 15x, and negative 3 times positive 2 is negative 6. So notice that when we did this, these signs changed. We know that we did this correctly because we have a 5x plus 2 in both places, the same term. Now we do the factoring, so we factor out 5x plus 2 times 2x minus 3, and that equals 10x squared minus 11x minus 6. Finally, here are two examples for you to try. Please stop the video, try both of these examples, and when you're finished, restart the video to see the answers. Okay, let's take a look at the first one. So first, we need to find two numbers that multiply to 12 times negative 7, that's negative 84, and add to 25. And a little guess and check will find that 28 and negative 3 will work just fine. Next, we write the function. We group the first two terms and the last two terms together. The first two terms have a common factor of 4x, so we factor that out. 4x times 3x is 12x squared. 4x times 7 is 28x. And here, the only common factor is 1. We don't write it, but we understand that there's a 1 there. And then we factor out the 3x plus 7, and we get 3x plus 7, and then 4x minus 1 is the other factor. In the second example, we need two numbers that multiply to negative 48 and add to negative 13. And again, with a little trial and error, we found that 3 and negative 16 work. So we'll rewrite splitting the middle coefficient, the x coefficient, into 8x squared minus 16x plus 3x minus 6. We group, factor out the 8x from the first two, factor 3 from the second two terms, and we have the answer of 8x plus 3 times x minus 2. And we see that it really does not matter which order we write these terms in. We could have easily written for the first one 3x plus 7 times 4x minus 1, and we could easily have written for the second one x minus 2 times 8x plus 3. In this last part of the video, I'm going to demonstrate the answer to a question that is often asked, and that is, when I split the coefficients here, I split it into 28x minus 3x. The question is, what happens if you split it the other way? So I'd like to do this problem here, factoring 12x squared plus 25x minus 7, the other way. In other words, reversing these two terms to see what happens. So I did that over here already. I wrote this as 12x squared minus 3x plus 28x minus 7. Now I'm going to group the terms. And in the first term, the common factor is going to be 3x, and that's going to leave 4x minus 1. And in the last term, 7 is the common factor, so this is also going to leave 4x minus 1. And you can see that when you factor out the 4x minus 1, you still have 3x plus 7, which is exactly the same thing as you got over here. So in fact, once you split the coefficient of x properly, it doesn't really matter which one goes where. It's often convenient if you have the choice to make this coefficient the positive one so that you don't have any sign problems. So when it's possible, do that, but otherwise it really doesn't matter. And that concludes this video.